Bill, oh, Bill got him?
No.
Oh,
Well, I passed them out.
yeah, okay, yeah,
At the last commission meeting.
yeah.
And
I
sent
got
them
him
out.
somewhere, I didn't bring him in. We can give him a couple more minutes. He had to run to Springfield. How long did it take before he be here?
When I talked to him, it's about 25 minutes ago, this side of Fort Street.
I dress down every now and
Oh, every now and again? Well, I guess you do. Oh, you do have your store in that one.
Sheriff's Association.
That'll be seven. County commission, zoning is seven.
And most sheriffs right here wear a suit.
Well, I think it'll be. Oh, is that right?
I'm not the only one wearing it.
Oh, okay. That must be a trend. My police chief, he got to where he was wearing a suit. You know, just got it.
Meeting come to order. One of our people, he's on the way back from Springfield, he may be about 10, 15 minutes late, still. He had to run up there for this afternoon for something. The minutes, everybody read the minutes? Yeah, anybody want to make an approval, make a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve it.
Second the motion.
All in favor, say aye. I called this meeting just in case anybody had any more they wanted to bring up. Because of, I'm sure the work session will be more people here, and be a lot more, but anyway, thought I would get this meeting in just in case people have something that they want to talk about, change some people, but ask some more questions, give us a chance to maybe answer those questions. So, you have anything, Mr. Kyle?
If you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to field them, you know, or if I don't have answers tonight, I can get you answers and provide them to the board or whoever before the work session.
Yeah, cause I sent out a couple of emails asking for, reminding commissioners and people that, you know, if there were questions that, any issues that you still had questions about, if you could come prepared to ask those questions tonight. And I also sent out some questions for Mr. Beeler, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, that I've not received any of the answers for. I thought maybe we could get some of those answers tonight.
I sent that back to you on March the 26th.
I didn't get, did you send it to the old Jack email, the one that I sent it from?
I sent it, I replied to the email that you sent to me, which was oldjack1231@icloud.com.
You did, I'm sorry, that was my mistake.
You go ahead and look at them. I have a question. Qualifications
My apologies.
to being a fireman, other than being a volunteer. What I know, one of our commissioners is awful big on qualifications, and I just wondered what qualifications that y'all had when you joined. Other than you decided you wanted to be one, was there anything you had to, any qualifications you had to meet other than being a volunteer?
They have to be a minimum of 18. They have to possess a valid driver's license. And then once they've been approved for their membership status, which will include a vote and cleared through the mayor's office, they run a short background check. and then verify their, social security number. Once those have been processed and approved, then they are run through a medical physical exam.
Okay.
And after all of those can be checked off, then they will enter a 6-month probationary period. And at the end of that 6 months, then they're again reviewed. If we approved them and they never showed up for trainings or calls, then they're most likely gonna get terminated. If there was some valid reason, if they had a hospitalization, for example, that was unexpected, that took them out of service for an extended period of time, then that probation can be extended for another 6 months. And we've had a few over the years that we did 2 probations with, but they could be cut loose at that time, or they could have their probation extended. And then once they've completed that probation, then they are what we would consider a full firefighter. And then they'll be going through different trainings as a fireman once they have joined the ranks.
How did you work your way up to being where you at now? Chief, or?
Well, I joined in 1990, I believe. Served as a fireman for, I'm not sure how many years, David. And, I moved up to a rank of captain. There were 2 captains identified roughly at the same time, and we had 2 assistant chiefs at that time too. So that composed the chief, the 2 assistants, and the 2 captains composed the leadership group. Through some attrition and other things, we lost one of the captains, and a little later on, we lost one of the assistant chiefs, and so I was asked to step up and promoted to an assistant, and then from there, my track kind of followed on when Jimmy retired. Because prior to Jimmy retiring, we'd had 2 assistants.
Yeah.
Guffey and myself,
Yeah.
and then Guffey passed away, so that left only 1 assistant on the roster at that time.
In your years on the service, in the last 5 years, have you gone to any outside classes, any outside seminars? Have you taken any online classes as far as how fireground training has changed, or how safety has changed, or anything like that?
Yeah.
Mr. Buckmaster, you're not the assistant chief now?
Yes.
Okay. Have you been to any outside classes other than what you do here in Trousdale County? Have you been to the fire school, the academy for any other classes? Is there anybody that's a safety officer that's certified in our department? Do you have a certified
Not as a
safety officer?
certified safety officer.
Do you have a certified training officer?
No.
Are those requirements by the state? I mean, are we required to have those positions and we don't?
Yes, ma'am, you definitely, and every fire, you've gotta have somebody that's in charge of safety. A person that pays attention to the fire and tells people to move in or move out or whatever. There's always a person that's a safety person. And that sometimes, a lot of places, it's a chief that does it. In some places, they have a person assigned to do that, but depends on, a big here, what I would assume, that a chief would be the one that's a safety person and have the training for safety, because, he has to be able to watch the fire and say, okay, get back, because it's fixed to do this, it's fixed to cave in,
Right.
or,
So we have that, right? We have that. I'm talking about the positions that Mr. Hunt had
We don't
No,
have
we
an
don't.
identified officer that does that,
And we don't have anybody
It
that's been in any
functions-
training to be that, right? I'm not picking on anybody, I'm just asking.
well, our training has been mostly on the job training and experience through the years.
I know several years ago, if you were watching on Channel 5 one morning, they had a big fire propane tanks. And you could see the firemen all moving up, and then all of a sudden you saw them turn and run. The safety person, because it wasn't just about 30 seconds after they all turned and run, it blowed up. So somebody was paying
Well, we
attention.
have right now, we have somebody that watches, correct, when they're
I'm sure
responding to a fire.
yes.
Yes, so
Yeah, I'm sure
it's
you
not
do.
like it's not being done.
Yes,
It's just
ma'am.
not a title. We don't have a title position. It's not that it's not being done, it's just that title, correct?
Well, I mean, is it being done? You have somebody that's assigned to do that on everything.
That's been trained?
That has been trained by us, they have not attended an outsourced class on that, but our regular and ongoing training will, include, the nature of fire activity.
So it's do one, watch one, kind of. Like, you know, you on the job training is what you're doing.
Well, plus we have training classes that come to us once a month.
So you are trained in
Yes,
it.
Okay, well, we're talking the industrial thing y'all do once a month where you can sit and watch a film?
no,
Yeah, do you have, but, so what I'm asking, and I know Mr. Baylor, you and I have a little bit at odds about this, but you got no state certified firefighters. You've got no state certified training officers, no state certified safety officers, nothing. And you've told us before, and this is the only reason I'm making a point on this, is your department's not required to be any of that, have any training or do anything. That's what you said, you were exempt from all this
We are.
training before.
we are.
Well, do you think that's a smart way to be, and not
Well-
have us up to snuff of up to standards of what other fire departments are?
The state legislature allowed that exemption to go through. It was not my call to make.
Okay, all right, thank you, Doug, I appreciate it.
Yes, sir, Mr. Baker. Excuse me.
I don't know what Mr. Hunt's asking here, but 95% of our firefighters actually have been through the 16-hour, the thing that Mr. Cross brought up that we weren't aware of. We scheduled that class and all of our people took it, the 64-hour, the 16-hour live burn. The state required training.
Yeah.
As I understand it, they have, all but one is taken except for the 3 probationary members. So I don't know if that's what he's getting at. The safety officer, we've actually got one gentleman scheduled to go to the Smoky Mountain Weekend for their safety officer class right now. I mean, I'm not sure what he's asking, but as far as following what Mr. Cross referenced in the meeting here sometime back, I believe that we have followed all of that, even though we are exempt. We still have done it. Many of ours have went through this. I went through it like 10 years ago.
The
Several others
classes
went through it.
that they're going through are taught by certified trainers, fire academy trainers. They're typically members from adjoining departments who have achieved training status. So our people don't have to go as far away as the fire academy. They can go to Lafayette or they can go to Carthage to partake in those classes. So we have not ignored the training, but I still contend as a county and as an entity, we're exempt.
So do you use an outsourced company, is that,
They do.
and who is that?
Industrial Training and Rescue, they're out of Lawrenceburg. They are a state certified trainer. They train for industry as well as other fire departments.
And how much does that normally cost a year?
Probably about $3,500 a year.
For,
They bill us each month that they conduct training, and they typically conduct 10 or 11 training events a year.
so $3,500 total for a year.
Yes.
And how many years have we used them?
Probably 10. At one time, the department was doing its own training led by Chief Anthony. The training was getting a little more comprehensive than Jimmy felt comfortable with, so we began to outsource and use a company that other departments were using. Lafayette has used this same company, and they train for several other industries in the safety and OSHA reg area. So we probably used them about 10 years. I'm not certain. I'd have to look back through records to find that part out.
How's, Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
how's the meetings with Mr. Beeler and Mr. Beatty been?
They've gone well, the ones we were able to have. We were supposed to have one last Friday, however, I was under the weather and not able to participate.
Understand?
But they've been nothing but cooperative, and when we were able to schedule it, they were there, and
Okay.
so there've been no issues there. And I've sent them emails, and they've both responded. There's been no issue with response or cooperation there whatsoever.
And I realize that you did send the answers, and I apologize that I have not read them. So,
You didn't ask me to send them to everybody, so I only sent them back to you and the mayor.
I understand, and like I said, I do apologize for that, but you'll forgive me for asking these questions. The question about the performance evaluations and the yearly skill documentation,
We do not do that.
you do not do that. So how do you advance from firefighter to captain to,
Well, one, we don't have very many vacancies, so the advancement doesn't happen very often. It typically takes an exit of a higher officer before we have a role to fill. The last time we did it was at my appointment as an interim chief and Larry Guffey's death and Jimmy Anthony's resignation. We had voids to fill. We looked within the department and I made a recommendation to the membership based on length of service, longevity, activity, which would be fire calls that they make. We annually chart the members' responses, and those that are the most active are identified at the end of each year. So we've got a record of at least on-call performance. And then the rest is just observations that are made by a working coworker. So those are the methods that I used to make the last two recommendations, which was Mr. Buckmaster as assistant chief and Danny Sullins as captain.
you know, and as a nurse, you know, every year we do our yearly checkoffs. You know, I have to demonstrate that I can do blood pressure, glucose, and all that. Y'all don't do that with?
We do those things as a part of our training. There are certain months that different aspects are covered, and then an attendance record is kept for who was there when that topic was covered. Yes.
But you don't have record.
Not
of
on
that.
1-4. No.
Mr. Mayor, have you actually sat down with Mr. Beatty and Mr. Beeler, and y'all have discussed merging the two departments together yet?
Well, that was what we were going to discuss last Friday when I was
Oh, so
sick.
we haven't got to that point, okay.
But that is something I've sent them emails back and forth with, and Mr. Beatty and I have talked about it, and Chief Beeler and there, we did briefly discuss it in our first meeting we had, but at that meeting, to be honest with you, I was more
Other
worried
things
about
were
our
more, yeah.
natural disaster response and those kind of things given the recent flooding.
I agree with you.
Anybody got anything? Like,
Y'all already go through the list?
no, we just went over, I asked about the training, or what the qualifications were, other than being a volunteer, and got answers on that, so we went from there. So,
One of the things I have heard, and it looks like you've already gone over it, job descriptions from some of the commissioners have asked about job descriptions of the fire departments. And if you merge this thing together, from what I have understood, there's some flexibility as to how some of those job descriptions would look. I think there's a concern from some of the current members of the fire department, I'm trying not to speak out of turn, but they were anxious to see what the new job descriptions would look like. And as I had talked with different people that are in the know, they indicate that there's different ways to draw up job descriptions, that typically you don't draw up a job description necessarily in advance of putting something together like what we're talking about, but you would do it afterwards to make it better fit some of the needs of some of the ones that are currently there. And then what you do is you try to raise the bar little by little as time progresses. I know I've taught people how to be lifeguards before, and they know how to do CPR nowadays. You know, there's just little requirements. But I think there's a concern, or has been a concern, by some of the people that are there, like, hey, is this going to exclude me? Is this going to include me? Can I still be part of this? And I'd like to air that out now if we could, or at least have a conversation about. Tell me about the job descriptions that you currently have there at the fire department.
The only two that we have that that we've developed one for a firefighter, and that's, David, what we've discussed, the steps at the beginning. And then we identified requirements for a fire chief. But other than that, no other positions have there been job descriptions identified
For your current force in your department. Okay, so let me go through that for just a minute. So who all's in the department? So you have captains and you have, tell me some of the jobs.
We have had captains and assistants. For most of the years, the department was structured with a chief, 2 assistants, 1 or 2 captains. We have had a lieutenant position before, but not at the present time. And again, most of those begin to be based on seniority, longevity, coupled with their overall responses, and then co-worker or personal evaluations of how they have worked and performed on different tasks.
So right now,
Now we've got a chief, 1 assistant, and 1 captain.
Okay.
We're a little light on the administrative side right now.
Any of the people that currently came onto your roster, what type of fire experience would they have?
Typically, our probationary firemen have 0 experience.
Okay.
They're coming on as simply a resident of the community, and they have no experience at all, and so there's a pretty distinct learning curve with them.
So
it will actually be several years before I would consider them trained well enough to assume a leadership role.
Okay. I was wondering if some of those have been Firefighter 1 and commissioned, or Firefighter 2.
Typically, the ones we have been getting, Bill, have had 0 fire experience. Once they are accepted, then the training begins. So, unlike other professions where people come to you with a certain defined skill set, they come to you with a college degree, or they come to you with training certificates. The new firemen that we typically get are untrained local citizens, and then we have to train them.
Gotcha. So then, oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Ferguson, if I could, I'll read this to you. I actually only have one copy of it. I'll be happy to get you a copy. Hartsville Volunteer Fire Department member, new recruit information, job description for firefighter, definition of firefighter responsible for fire suppression, rescue operation, related protective services, perform mostly under emergency conditions with extreme personal risk under close supervision. Other related work is required under general supervision. Equipment job location, using specialized firefighting equipment, small hand tools, power tools, heavy rescue equipment, hose with appliance, other tools, equipment as needed are used on a regular basis under emergency conditions in various settings, locations. Essential functions of the job are respond to fires for suppression activities, including forcible entry, search and rescue, ventilation and salvage work, perform rescue of trapped victims at various other emergency scenes, operate fire apparatus in the absence of a firefighter engineer, inspect and maintain firefighter gear and equipment for readiness. Additional examples of work performed include assist in maintaining fire apparatus and equipment, including cleaning fire station and grounds, participate in continuing education program by attendance to in-service training and other training when offered, perform other tasks related to fire service. Required knowledge and abilities, ability to learn technical fire suppression techniques and hydraulics principles and basic first aid and emergency medical procedures, general knowledge of the geography of the city and the county, location of important buildings, communicate clearly with the public and emergency personnel, both written and verbally, keep records and prepare reports, ability to work effectively with others under stressful conditions, ability to establish and maintain good working relationship with fellow firefighters and general public. Qualifications are firefighter must have physical agility and endurance to handle firefighting and other emergency tasks. Mechanical aptitude would be useful. Possession of a valid driver's license is required. So that is our current description for an incoming firefighter.
Incoming fireman will be personally one-on-one counseled through that paperwork so that he or she understands those expectations.
Mr. Buckmaster, is that an official fire department document?
It is, sir. Signed by Chief Jimmy Anthony.
What's the date on it?
Effective August 14th, 1997.
Good deal. Thank you.
So, taking that job descriptor right there in general terms, I mean, it's got a lot of details in it. Would that be something that at the state level you would say that's all that we need, Mr. Cross, or is that just a beginning of what we would need?
Well, it's kind of, in my opinion, if we merge these departments, we would take the senior staff and write the job descriptions. Of course, it's a local decision. I mean, you can be satisfied with nothing, no training, or you can raise the bar to NFPA standards. I mean, it's kind of up to you all. And I'm just saying, don't write people out of a job.
Right, that's right. That's where we want to ensure that.
But let's build people.
Do we have different levels for some of those that maybe just want to do certain things? Of course,
Some of the job descriptions that I have done most recently, and these were for the fire chief, but maybe an internal candidate didn't have a lot of certifications or whatever. We write a job description, but then we put like a professional development plan in the job description that says, hey, over the next 3 to 4 years, the candidate will achieve these certifications or this training, or else they get replaced by somebody else. So, we write it, I mean, it's my opinion, you meet some kind of NFPA standard over time instead of just being satisfied with status quo.
okay.
That's my opinion, It's kind of like I told y'all at the very beginning of this thing, Trousdale County is an exempt county from training. The state law says you had a legislator go to Capitol Hill and say, you're not capable of training people here. Whether it's a hardship for them to go to school or attend training or money or whatever. I would say that's false. I think y'all can make it happen. I think with the resources of the Fire Academy, they'll bring a class. We was talking about what, $3,500 a year. I mean, we can bring modern residential fire attack here and bring you into the 21st century of firefighting for $400 or less. I mean, it's a 4-hour course. I think it's $200 actually. And they'll send an instructor up here for 4 hours and teach the state-of-the-art new techniques of fighting fire. And, you know, if you don't do that, you'll get judged by it at some point if you hurt or kill somebody. I mean, so you gotta stay on top of that thing.
So you're saying we're not getting that training now?
I don't know what you're getting. If you don't have anybody that's been to learn it, how do you teach it?
State certified instructors that go to ongoing education.
So have you been to modern residential fire attack?
The
It's only
instructors,
been out about 4 or 5 years.
the instructors that come to us teach fire attack, yes.
But is it the latest and greatest?
Couldn't tell you that exactly, but I think you're assuming that it's not.
I am assuming that it's not, because you don't know.
How would you know?
Huh?
How would
If you don't know what you was
taught?
taught, you don't know if you got the latest and greatest.
How would you know what we are being taught? You have never been to one of our trainings, so.
Okay.
I think the thing that is
It's
important to know is that you're saying there's a certification program which ensures and monitors that these types of things and trainings go on. And either you're certified as an entity or you're not. And if you're not, then that means you don't have to meet these standards. That's where it comes down to
And the
me.
board can fix that on one meeting. You guys can draw up an ordinance that says you're not gonna be exempt anymore, that we can do this.
What were the reasons why we were exempt to start with?
I
What were
don't
some
have a
things
clue.
at that
Because
time?
of your population. You fit between 7,000, 7,100, whatever your population was in that year.
Okay.
And then, that was the only rationale,
What,
for exempting you.
was part of it because the training, people had to travel a long distance where the training when it first started, or?
They don't have to, they can do it right here.
I know, but when it first started.
No,
I
they
mean,
can still do it right here.
But when it first became a certification issue,
It's not a certification, it's just minimum training.
right, just minimum training from the state to be certified, did the people have to go to, say, Bell Buckle, or did they have to go, no, they could have done it,
They could have done any work.
could have done it anyway.
Mr. Ferguson, like I told you a while ago, we've got one man that hasn't taken these classes you're talking about. 70-something-year-old, and he drives a tanker. And our 3 probationary members have just started. The rest of them have already taken it. Whether we're exempt or not is a moot point, we took it anyway.
Well, it's
I think
not-
you need to get over that
I think
part.
certification is something that we all need to ensure everybody that we are of a certain level, and that we continue to be at that certain level. I don't think that's new at all.
But we have that, sir, that's what I'm telling you, we've taken it anyway.
We're currently not a certified fire department, is that right, from the state?
I'm not for sure, I don't think anybody has a certification here that I know of.
You talking about the commission?
I'm talking about, yeah, and if, you know, Tennessee IFSAC or Pro Board certification saying you're a firefighter, that would be recognized anywhere outside of Trousdale County.
What are the classes that you're talking about, the state requires us to take?
It
That's
doesn't
not what you're talking
require it,
about?
all it takes is 16, 64 and a live burn and set foot test.
Mhm.
That's all it takes, and the test is free. So, I mean, and they come here to do it as long as you have 6 people say.
Yeah, we did the 64 hours here, we of course went to Bell Buckle for
I'm
the
not
live
talking about the
burn.
training, I'm just saying you did the 16, you did the 64, and you've done the live burn.
Yes, sir.
Now all you have to do is call the commission and say, hey, I wanna test my people on
If you're
this.
certified,
you're-
you should have a certificate.
You're talking about, I have a certificate that says firefighter 1 live burn, but it's not commissioned one.
It's not a certification, it's a
So-
certificate of training.
Yes. So you're saying the commission? No, we don't have anybody with a
Right, nobody
commission.
here has a commission
No.
certification that says that you've met any kind of NFPA competency as a firefighter.
No, sir.
And I mean,
think-
that's nothing against you, that's just saying you've never done that before.
Yeah, I think most of us actually will have to go through the live burn again, because it's been so long since we've had it, we're gonna have to do that again anyway.
So, yeah, it would have to be within the last year or so.
I think it said 3 years.
Like-
I tried to look it up that day.
I
It's
used to work here,
difficult.
but the rules changed quite
Does
a
it
bit.
cost very much to be a certified?
It's free, it's
Oh,
absolutely free.
something in the neighborhood of $344
What, to go to class?
to get all of it.
You can do all
160.
of it, but the live burn sitting right here in your fire hall, though, I mean,
Yeah.
it's for free.
TFAC's website shows $344 and 168.5 hours.
It's 100 hours, it's, 16, 64, and 16 again for the live burn.
And, the HMO, the, ICS, the CPR, the domestic violence, all
All
that.
it can be taught here for free.
Okay. Says it costs for them to teach it.
Well, it may do it, but you can go to TennesseeFireTraining.com and get all the hazmat training for free. And I have people do that all the time and pass the exam.
No reason not to get certified.
Yeah, it's about, where do we stand with our fire department in terms of our individual firefighters as to what they have taken, what they haven't taken, what would be necessary still to fulfill the requirements necessary to become certified? I mean, I think that'd be a good thing.
Well,
We need to know where we are before we.
prior to July 1, you can take the hazmat awareness and operations exam without taking a course. And since most of the staff here are seasoned staff, they should not have a problem passing that exam. After July 1, there's gonna be required coursework. So the commission's changing. So again, they see the need to ensure that we are trained before being certified. So, fresh off the presses, July 1, I think it is, we gotta take a course in order to get hazmat awareness and operations certified. Then after that, you would go for your firefighter 1 and then firefighter 2. And in paid world, it takes, they generally give you 3 years to do that.
I had a few questions about the option 1 that they're wanting us to vote on at the next county commission meeting. It says that, the organizational chart, that the fire chief is gonna be appointed by the mayor, and then there's 3 deputies. Who's gonna hire those positions?
2 of them are already filled, so it's.
And so, are they full-time positions now?
No.
Because in the option 1, it says that, option 1 suggests that there be the fire chief, 2 deputy chiefs at the fire hall from 7 AM to 4 PM, plus 2 EMS drivers. Is that correct?
Well, 2 of the positions are filled by 1 person.
So that would be, okay, so that, you would hire that position? It's already filled. And is he currently, right now, is he on duty from 7 AM to 4 PM?
On the days that he's here, yes.
But not Monday through Friday, like it says in option 1, correct?
No, he's part-time, so he can't be here Monday through Fridays.
Okay, but if we vote on option 1 like presented, then that would change it. It would be, he would be every day from 7 AM to 4 PM.
It'll stay the same as it is now.
But that's not the wording in the ordinance.
I'll have to look at it.
Yeah, well, I don't have my hard copy. I pulled it up on my phone. And it says, it looks like to me there's gonna be 7 people at the fire hall.
On a full day, that's not right.
Yeah,
You mean at the, the fire hall or at the EMS building?
right. Well, it says, the director or fire chief is responsible, let's see, to develop the plan. Okay, the emergency management agency day-to-day operation will be led by the deputy chief. Okay, option 1, when fully staffed, will provide EMS personnel to be stationed at the fire hall to include director fire chief, fire rescue deputy chief, EMA deputy chief, EMS deputy chief, shift battalion chief, and an ambulance with 2 fire EMS trained crew members Monday through Friday, 7 AM to 4 PM. So that to me sounds like there's gonna be 7 people at the fire hall.
Well, it says when fully staffed, I think is your key.
But that's what we're wanting to do, right? We're wanting to do 7, that's what the option is.
Just the potential
Option 2 when we have people
whenever, if
at the
everyone's
EMS at the fire hall.
there at the same time.
Option 1 is just like it is now.
Right now, Matt fills 2 positions.
Okay.
Is that not right, Matt?
Well,
You're
the
the
positions she's
director.
talking about are the deputy emergency management and deputy EMS, and that's filled by, those 2 positions are filled by 1 person. So,
Which is Matthew, right?
no, which is Mark.
Or Mark, okay. And you currently work how at Mark? Or when do you work?
I work, 3 days a week, 8 hours a day.
From what time? Do you have a shift or is it just,
No, it's normally from, 7:30 AM to 4 PM,
okay.
3 days a week.
And is that at the EMS building
Mhm.
or, okay. And so for option one says that you would go
So you not
from,
on call?
Oh, yeah, I mean, when I leave from up here, I'm
you're
still.
still on call,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
I'm still on, I'm pretty much on duty all
Right.
the time.
But then the option one says when fully staffed, the plan is when this goes, when we pass it and it's fully, that you'll be there from 7 AM to 4 PM Monday through Friday.
No.
Okay, so
Fully
the
staffed.
option one,
No, it's when everybody is on duty.
At the same time.
I mean, that could fluctuate with somebody calling out sick.
Yeah.
Or taking a vacation day. That's when everyone is there, that's your maximum capacity, potential to have their.
so what's the plan now? What's it gonna be? If we vote this, so the EMS committee has asked the county commission, or they have recommended to the county commission to move forward with this, recommending that we approve option one, which says that there will be, when it's fully staffed, there will be these people at the fire hall. So you're saying that is not correct? That's not what it's gonna be?
I think that is correct, but it's almost like saying I have perfect attendance at school too.
You gotta-
When we have perfect attendance, this will be everybody that'll be there.
You gotta keep reading.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I think I'm right.
It says,
Well, then it
There-
says
wait.
battalion chiefs
it
and.
says there also could be times that the fire deputy rescue chief, EMA deputy chief, and EMS deputy chief will not be available due to their other jobs or sick/vacation time off. This would also include the director/fire chief. An agreement and or arrangement with the volunteer firefighters to help maintain staffing during these periods will be paramount. I anticipate minimum staffing by the fire, EMS, EMA to be 2 personnel at the fire hall at all times when fully implemented. You gotta read the whole thing.
I know, but it's confusing
Well,
to me.
okay, let me,
It's
I just wanna see if I can explain this a little bit to
Okay.
you. Okay. When Matt's in town, which is usually 7 days a week, he's here. So
Uh-huh.
but he's on call all the time. Monday through Friday, they're always up at the ambulance service. They'll
Well, he
basically-
just said he wasn't, he said he worked 3 days a week.
I'm here 5 days a week.
Oh,
I'm Matt.
okay.
He's director over all of them.
Okay.
Then you've got Mr. Carmen,
Okay,
he does 3 days a week, plus he's on call
okay,
at any time. All right, now, let's just say that it's Monday morning, Matt comes into work, there's a battalion chief already that runs the shift for the EMS. There's 5 people on duty.
okay. But we're
Okay.
not talking about the
Well,
EMS,
hold
we're
on.
talking about what's gonna be
Well,
down
that's what's
here.
gonna be down here, so you
That's what I'm
can, so you see. Some of those EMS personnel are firefighter trained, so when you're reading it, we're not hiring a bunch of extra people to come in. We're gonna move one of the ambulance crews down by the station, so that gives you your 2 personnel that are firefighter trained, that can take the first engine out if a call comes in at that particular time, or they're not on an ambulance call. What it also does with Mr. Beatty or one of them, it also gives you 2 more people to either take out a second engine or first respond and wait on the volunteers to come in and grab the other trucks and go. We're not adding a bunch of people. It is a little bit confusing by looking at the paperwork.
Right.
It looks like we're putting on a bunch of new people and we're not. Most of those people are already here. They're already there. All we're doing is moving a crew to stand by down at the fire hall along with the director, the deputy director, if the, you know.
Along with, so there'll be 4 people, it says 7,
Anywhere
it's
from
gonna
4
be
to 5 people will be there Monday through Friday unless that ambulance that is there is out on call.
Okay,
The deputy fire chief should be there.
right,
Should the deputy EMA and EMS chief be there? Battalion chief, and then the 2 crew members from the ambulance. So you get at least 6, and then potentially 7 full staff. Will be a 7 staff people there.
right.
It would've been a whole lot easier
All-time
to explain if we had to spend a bunch of money and just hired some folks.
Well, why don't you just,
But when you're trying to deal with volunteers, you know, they're not here every day.
in the ordinance, why don't you just say that, in the ordinance that you've given us to read,
This
why
isn't
not
an ordinance.
just?
That's not the ordinance, that's just a description of what we planned. The ordinance,
Of how it's gonna come
the
together.
ordinance is pretty short and sweet.
Well, like I said, we've been,
And one of the other reasons there's lots of grants. Grants for the fire department end of it, grants for the other end of it that can be gotten. Once things get moved together, we can file for some grants that we're not taking advantage of now, that we can take advantage of.
But we can also get grants now, but we don't have to put them together to get grants.
I don't know if anybody's in the fire department's ever put in for a grant.
Mr. Booth, y'all file for grants?
Not staffing grants.
Well, not the staffing grant, I mean, you filed for equipment, okay, we've received some of that?
We did not qualify, we did not meet the guidelines most of the years. We were actually,
But
as
we
a
tried, so-
department, too well funded by county government. We had too new of equipment, already. So the only thing we got from the firefighter grants that came out of 9/11, was we got, SCBA equipment one year. We asked for trucks, we asked for tankers, we asked for a station. We've asked for several things for 6 or 7 years in a row, got turned down all but one. But we've never applied for a staffing grant because they did not fit the model we were following.
Let's stay on that topic for just a minute with grants. So we have in the past applied for these things and have been turned down. Steve, can you help us with that a little bit?
Has it been done by professional grant writers? And I'm not
You
saying
know,
anything,
yeah,
I'm just
I'm
asking.
wondering, is it
We
because
did
of
it
the way we
in-house.
fill it out, or what is why are we, I mean, we're not Brentwood.
Well, you don't have to be. The county I grew up in, they had 13 fire stations, all under really one name, but they all had 13 fire department ID numbers. They had one, I call him a kid, he was a young guy that could write the grants. He could read the guidance and write the grant to meet the guidance. They were getting fire trucks, thermal imaging cameras, turnout gear. It put us to shame. They could get 13 different grants funded, I could only get one.
So is some of this talent
You just have to read the grant guidance and make sure you write to the guidance.
because in all
And that
fairness,
varies every year.
and in all fairness, you don't have anybody right now at the fire department that's full-time. If you put them together, at least you could have some people that would be there that would be full-time that could spend some time. I don't blame the fire department for trying. I mean, why would you? But if we're missing something, if a T's not being crossed or an I's not being, is that our problem? Because when's the
Another
last time?
opportunity is to get some of your staff to actually go grade grants. I mean, if you get some of them in the loop, they'll invite them to come to Emmitsburg and sit down and learn how to score the grants. Then you learn how to write the grants while you're scoring them, see?
I mean, the county's on the hook for 100% of a fire truck. We've already approved it, and now we're gonna go back and put some stuff on it. Before it's said and done, $300,000 is coming out of the taxpayer's pocket of Trousdale County. Now, if we had applied for a grant and didn't get it, I don't know, but did we try to get a grant for that? Or how long's it been since we
Not this
tried?
truck we didn't, but we have tried for tankers
Yeah.
and engines, in previous years. The last engine we acquired was, engine 8. We did attempt to get it through this assistance to the firefighter grants. They started out pretty well focused on just firefighting equipment. Over the years, Department of Homeland Security expanded the scope, and they began to include medical grants, as well as ambulance grants, as well as fire grants, and they covered the waterfront with grants. In the first 2 or 3 years, it was strictly firefighting equipment. And we applied, I guess the first year we had an application, or certainly the second year. I can't remember what our first one was, but they presented you with a set of written guidelines. They would offer in those early days a webinar or a nearby class you could go to for instructions. We did both of those, and then Chief and myself assembled the grant document and submitted it. Had to be submitted electronically. There was no other way to do it. You didn't submit a paper grant.
It takes somebody real, I mean,
and you never really knew what you did wrong You just got a rejection
Till
letter.
it's too late.
Okay.
Okay.
And the whole process took 9 or 10 months from the time you started till you finally got your acceptance or rejection letter. And like I said, the only thing we got funded was a set of SCBA one time. And
So Stevie, how do we get the ball back? Of course, the grant for this year we missed, but it's every year, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And how do we get on the scoreboard? How,
Does the county own a grant writer? I mean,
Yes. Well, we don't own it, but we
you gotta,
utilize one. Stephen's still in here. I think her name is Faye Leonard. I believe the name of her company is Matt. Is it Vantage out of Cookville? Her base of operations is out of Cookville, and she has written all of the CDBG grants that the county has applied for over the years. She does operate a professional grant writing service. Takes a part of her fee comes off of is a commission off of the dollars of the grant. It's a common way of doing it.
let me stay on that for just a minute. Let's talk about
But in
that.
terms of owning one, not really. We just use that person as needed.
So when was the last time we actually tried for, when was our last go at it?
Did we do a forestry grant last year?
We do, well, but they're separate, Ken. The state of Tennessee has offered fire departments a grant, small grants, through State Forestry Service. You can typically only get small equipment, hand tools, hoses, stuff like that. You can't get big stuff, because typically the grant is $5,000–6,000. So you're not going to go shopping much with $5,000 or $6,000 in fire gear. But that grant is separate. We have been a recipient of that almost every year. Last year, Ken, we didn't get anything, did we?
No, they turned us down last year.
it maxes out, what, at 6,000?
Roughly, and
it's 50%.
5,500 is about what we've gotten most years, and then you've got a match.
You got a 50% match.
That's not the grants I'm talking about.
No.
The others are the assistance to the firefighting grants. It's probably been 5 years since we submitted one. Once, the last engine we got was 8. We submitted a grant to consider the new tanker. It was rejected, and when it was rejected, then we redirected and came the route of county funding it. We were not going to sit back and wait and hope for a grant that might not materialize. We knew we needed to lock down the tanker one way or the other. So that's when we came to the county and asked for funding.
Yeah, because so let me get this straight. So it's been at least 5 years, maybe a little longer, since we tried to get some of those grants.
Yes.
And I know Jimmy came to us one time and said, "Hey, can I get that tanker?" And we said, "Not this year, you have to wait another year." So I guess it was in our last budgetary year that we actually approved and
Probably 3 years ago that you really started putting the dollars in the budget.
to get
And
ready
then
for
the
it.
bidding process and the building process. The building process on this tanker is over 300 days long.
Yeah.
And so that's throwing you into another budget year.
Yeah.
Even after the bid was accepted and approved and the purchase order written. So this becomes a lengthy process to get trucks.
Let's stay with that for just a minute, Steve. What types of these grants that we've talked about in the past that help the fire departments out, what all do they include? Give me some examples of things that you can get with some of these grants.
It's like Chief said, it's a pretty extensive list. When you start looking at it, the SAFER grant, we've talked about a lot about staffing. You can put in for a grant for SAFER to do even recruitment of volunteer firefighters and retention. You also hire firefighters. And the grant period is 3 years. The first 2 years, the grant pays 75%, and the third year it pays 35%.
So will it pay for uniforms? Will it pay for fire gear? Will it pay for improvements into your fire station? Will it pay for?
Well, there's grants for that, but Safer don't. Now,
No, that's not
Safer-
safer. I want to
It's
safer. I
staffing.
want to table it for just a
Yeah.
second.
If you go on to operations and safety training, there's a grant there. I mean, I only listed high priority stuff here. I was ready for this a couple weeks ago for y'all in case you asked, but, high priority on the AFG operations and safety under training. Training consistent with national standards, IFSAC Pro Board certification, free. Ask for it, they will fund it, I promise you, it's a high priority.
Say that again.
It's, training consistent with national standards and bringing people up to IFSAC or Pro Board certification. Training that brings the department into compliance. So if y'all wasn't exempt and you had to get people a certain amount of training, it would bring you into compliance. It'll pay for, no medical training up to EMR, EMTs, EMR is up to EMTs, EMTs up to AMTs, and AMTs up to paramedics. So the training is there.
In the beginnings, it was mostly hard equipment. And then it gradually moved over into more other aspects that Steve's talking about. And then they threw in rescue and extrication and ambulance all under that umbrella in these latter years or halfway through. I don't remember when they started.
You guys use any of these grants yet?
We wrote one for some power cots and power loaders here in the last year.
Did you get it?
They haven't notified us yet.
Get
They said it could be as late as this fall.
Since the government shutdown, it's a little later this year. They normally notify people pretty quick, within 6 to 8 weeks
Are they
after it
paying?
closes, but with the government shutdown, it paused it a little bit this year.
Are they paying you right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
It wasn't fun. No.
We used somebody else's to help us along, so we had to.
We had from surrounding counties that wrote the similar grant for the same thing, and we were able to utilize some of their documents and narratives. But they're lengthy narratives. I can't estimate how many man hours we put into that one grant, but it was a lot.
I know at one time Wayma hired a person on the position that he's nothing but a grant writer. But he also had to get his money for his job plus the grants. And he did that for 4.5 years. And now he's full-time staff.
Question. Do you think, like you said, they were going more for the emergency medical and all that in the last few years? Do you think that's because that's the trend nowadays, is because of the combining of the emergency services?
Well, and initially, there was a great need to provide trucks and tankers for a lot of small departments across the country. They realized that was a deficient need, and that's what they funded. They directed millions, hundreds of millions of dollars for several years at trucks and tankers. And then as most of those needs were met, the dollars got shifted into other areas. Congress never wants to give back money. They always want to figure out a little different way to spend it, and once you complete a task in this position, then you move the line a little bit and you bring in other parts. So over those years, it got moved around to the medical and the rescue and the extrication and all those other things.
That's the same way it is with us in law enforcement. So we do a lot of grants.
You do.
A lot of times you don't get what you want, they tell you what they're gonna give you, and you decide whether you want it or not. A lot of times it's stuff we don't need or don't want.
And firefighting grants, there are certain years that there are limits on what you can put in your application and ask for. So if you didn't really need X, Y, Z, then that might be a reason not to apply, just like what Ray's saying. It didn't fit your need that year.
But I've applied for COPS grants in the past, talk about staffing.
Yeah.
Our first SRO was a COPS grant, and I got 2 other positions back 20 years ago when I first elected. We didn't have a third shift, and I started the third shift then. And the first year it paid for 75% of the salary. The next year was 50%. The third year was 25%. Like what you're.
That's the way ours used to be. Now it's 75, 75, 35.
Yeah.
So.
And then the fourth year, the local government has to either pick it up or terminate it.
That's why I'm a little.
Well, we done those grants. I've filled out a lot of it, and David Jenkins filled out some of it.
I'm a little nervous about going that big.
And we've never utilized SAFER because it never fit our staffing pattern before, so it just wasn't on the table.
Well, the Tennessee Fire Chiefs Association got a SAFER grant to do recruitment and retention. You can see it online right now. When people in this community see that commercial on TV or see that on the fire marshal's website or the fire chief's website, and they come into there and say, yeah, I'd like to be a volunteer firefighter, and put y'all's zip code in there, that gets routed to this department somewhere. And I don't know if y'all got any leads off of that or not, but again, the fire chief put in for a grant to try to help the volunteers recruit and all that, and that was part of it, was building those websites and all the analytics that go behind that.
I have a question. A while ago, state legislature, because of our amount of people in the county, did not, how you wanna say it, didn't make it required that we had to have the training or whatever. Now that our county has grown a right smarter people, what do you do to counter that?
Well, unfortunately, it was a lifelong membership once you got in.
It was a membership at a specific time based on a specific census.
Even though you say you grow 5,000 or 6,000 more people,
You couldn't grow out of it. You can vote yourself out of it. It's like I said, we had 2 counties actually get exempted in the last census because they grew into one of those gaps. But once you grow into a gap, you can't get out unless you guys, as the elected body, vote yourself out of it. You can pass an ordinance that says you don't want to be exempt anymore, and as long as 2/3 majority of the elected officials say yay, then you send that document to the fire marshal's office, you're not exempt anymore. And to me, that sends a clear message. I worked with Decatur County whenever I was with the firefighting commission, and they're an exempt county. And I went down and met with them and talked to them, and I said, you're exempt because the politician said you couldn't do it. It's not against politicians. I know there's some in the room. But somebody stood up at the legislature and said, y'all couldn't do it. And y'all are here tonight meeting saying you can. Now, they never did send that to the state, but they're working toward their certifications. Lewis County's exempt. The largest fire department in Lewis County is all volunteer. It's Hohenwald. It took us 2 years, everybody there certified firefighter 2 now. So, I mean, it can be done, it can be easily done. It's just.
Most of the exempts at that time were small rurals that kind of.
I think the largest one in there was like 40,000, which I don't think you really call that small.
No, that's not.
no.
But a lot of them were small.
So that's something we need to consider as we move.
And again, if you decide don't even take if you just raise the bar yourself, you can do that. But if you wanna pass legislation that says you're not gonna be exempt, you can do that too.
I was gonna say, can't you just, instead of legislation, the ordinance, just make it where it's a fire department policy that they start meeting the training requirements in policy? That way you don't write some people out that may not be able to get it, that's required by the state.
Well, I would think it would be easy enough to meet that, the minimum to meet. I mean, state law says you need 16 hours to ride the fire truck.
16 hours.
16 hours. After you get that 16, you can ride the truck, and then you gotta get that 64 live burn over the next couple of years, so.
I know when I was at the airport, it seemed like we fought a live fire every year. But I know we had to every 2 years to fight a live fire. We just done it in different places. One time they had a company that come in and set up a thing and it was run off propane.
Yeah.
And we went inside and fought live fire inside of that. And then the next year, we went to Kentucky to, up there to the airport up there, and they have a big place, airplane that's set up with natural gas, and you had to climb inside that plane, and quite interesting and fun, because they can sit back and they can push buttons and make that fire jump from back and forth on you and try to get behind you and all that stuff. It's quite exciting. But it's cramped and it's inside like being in a house. That's the same. So, but you if you know how to, if you do the hose right, put the right stream on it, it'll put it right out. You move right on down the aisle and do what you're supposed to. If you don't do it right, then you get hung up and then you're in trouble and you don't do good. But anyway, I just wondered, do they have a thing where you're supposed to every year, every 2 years have a live fire? Or
The state doesn't require anything like
it
that.
just,
I wish they did, but they don't.
they should.
But your own department can put that together and have their own live fire.
Yeah.
And should.
Yeah.
Should.
Now you can find a bunch of old houses around here that you burn them down.
You can't.
You can't do that more.
You can do it, but
The
it's a lot of
EPA
trouble.
requirements are too
yeah.
stringent, it ain't worth fooling with.
Probably gotta ask
It's not caught on accidentally.
You have to nearly strip the house before you can go in and burn it.
All them old guys back in the 60s that used to burn them down, they all died.
You know,
Yeah, so let me put the top on, let me put the cap on the ball here, so, and I got away from it. So currently, as we have a fire chief, and I'll be quick on this, 2 captains,
One captain, one assistant.
1 assistant, and a fire chief, and then the rest, there's no lieutenants.
No, not
But
correct.
at present, we don't have any job descriptions that separate the chief from the assistant chief to the captain, to the regular volunteers.
I don't believe we do we, Ken? Do we?
It's on the computer down there, we just haven't sent it to the attorney.
Okay. I don't think it's been formally approved.
We've been working on it for about a year now.
Cause I just know that's just something that I hear is a concern about the merger, or the possible merger, is that will we write some of these people out of it if we do that? Now, I don't think that's anybody's intention, but we wanna make sure that we don't do that.
well, y'all have asked me several times, I'd be an advocate to do what I was talking about. And I told several of y'all, in the lobby or whatever, that to write the job description, we really need the local input. Because it's easy for me to go to Nashville and I could write those things today and brought them through tonight. But they would have been mine, and you wouldn't like them. And so, once the merger were to happen, or if it don't happen and you just need job descriptions, we can help with that. But I think we need senior staff's input.
I think some more people need to hear that.
I think the local should put the job descriptions.
And
I
I
think
would
once we
be an
get it
advocate.
together, then the heads should sit down and set it out how it should be, like
Yeah.
on all organizations.
Yeah, where they don't hurt, don't phase people out or nothing.
Let me ask this question, fire department members currently, other than Firefighter 1, do you guys teach CPR or anything like that? First responder kind of stuff, or are you guys CPR certified?
We do our own, in-house CPR, every couple of years, however long their certification. Different ones will last different lengths of time.
You'll have somebody comes, does that
We
certified?
usually get it through the hospital.
Okay.
I was just curious.
I used to do that with
But that's not really firefighting.
I done a lot of
Then again, lifeguards don't have.
Dentist
that's
office and
curious.
stuff like that.
Y'all did that, I didn't know. So then the second thing I had written down were grants. That how do we get better? We're gonna have to have some help.
Well, you gotta first get in there and just find out what the guidance is. I went in and found this year all the high priority things. A community your size has a 5% match. And there's also a waiver, if you have fiscal limitations, you could ask for a waiver of that 5% match. So for $100,000, you're only talking about a $5,000 match. To me, that is just ludicrous not to ask for those type of grants. And I mean, in this community, a pumper, even a ladder truck or a quint, all those were high value, high priority items for a community like this. This community don't have a ladder truck. it's a high priority, that's gonna be a target for y'all. Y'all got downtown all over the place, and you don't have a ladder truck to protect it. You got a bunch of well-intended firefighters that dedicated and all that, but if they can't reach the roof, they're not gonna be. So I mean, I feel like I'm confident y'all could probably get a twin out of that, just because you don't have one. So there's just so many things. And I was thinking about EMS, just going back to those days. You know, you show up on the scene of a heart attack, somebody's pulseless and breathless, and you got 2 paramedics and maybe 2 paramedic or EMT firefighters there. You end up 3 of you doing patient care. The time you do chest compressions and giving them drugs and all this, and then somebody drives the ambulance back to the thing. I mean, one of the high priority things, there's an automatic chest compressor, you know, like through Zoll or somebody, that you just strap on to people and it does all that for you. I mean, then the paramedics can administer drugs, and in a rural county like this where you don't get 5 or 6 people probably on a heart attack, do you? not immediately. Yeah, so I mean, you know, I think something like that could save more lives in this county than I mean, it's. I don't want to throw rocks at anybody, but you don't know what you don't know, and if you don't know them grants are there, you don't know to go for them, and you got to get out there and get it done. Is all I'm saying.
Will there be something in your office that could assist with?
We've got a grant guy in Knoxville that I'm sure would. He helped us. We submitted a grant to do a research project on firefighter health and safety. And so we won't find out, you know, for probably another couple of months whether we get this funded or not, but even us, we're not a fire department, we're a university, we're putting in for grants because we need free money too.
Well, you get 100% of nothing when you don't ask for it.
That's correct.
We've got just a couple more minutes here, I wanna close this up, give us 15 minutes for the next meeting. Go ahead, I just want everybody to kind of get on the tail end of our last of our questions. It's been a very good discussion tonight, very good.
If I could, right quick, just years ago, and I don't know if she's still there, there's a lady named Kathy Decker at, she dealt with all the grants at Nashville, and she would, when I was with Rescue, she'd send me the emails of all the grants as they became available. Is that a name that's familiar with you? To you?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
But anyway, I think you could probably call one of them people and tell them this is what we're looking for. And she was like faithfully emailed every time a grant came up to put in for them. We didn't get any of them, but
we communicate a lot of that, not to individual departments most of the time, because we'll leave somebody out. But if you go and sign up to receive emails from our Google, the Tennessee Fire Service Google group, there's 3 of us that put stuff on there, and when grants become available, training becomes available, free training, low cost training, we always put that out there. So, you know, if I try to send it to you individually, I feel I miss you, but if you sign up for the Google group, you're not gonna get missed.
Do you have a question?
Hey, man?
Yeah.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
So I'm looking on here, it says the roster's gone from 15 to 19, but as we talked about earlier tonight, those 4 extra ones are kind of new.
They're new recruits. From one time period to the next.
Yeah. Matt, those people, and we were talking about this earlier, how many people have informed you that if this does merge, that they would be part of this new program that we're doing? It's currently just EMS only, but was it 9 people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And of those 9 people, how many of those are trained in it? And what are their trainings?
they've all got at least the minimum, the 16, 64, and the 16. A couple of them are career guys in other departments right now.
Are they all firefighter ones? I mean,
Well, Danny, he works for Lebanon Fire. He's a lieutenant there, so he's fire officer too, fire instructor, whatever.
So we would be getting people that not just green, I mean, they know the basics of firefighting.
Yeah, sure.
Grant wise, if we put it together, will it give us any favoritism at all? Does it help us out any?
What do you mean?
If we put this together as one grant wise, does that give us more favorable lighting?
Well, the fire department covers the whole county now, but you know, when you write a grant that if it could affect the EMS service and the fire service, I would think it would show a better cost analysis.
Okay.
The usual way to get a different view or look is if your change causes an alteration in your size and scope.
Okay.
If you start doing something bigger or differently than you're doing today,
Yeah.
then you get a different look at the grading level.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, but
That's the reason, turnout gear, SCBA, training, basic certifications. I told the government when I was up there reading grants, you know, if y'all would just open up a factory that made turnout gear and air packs and trained a few folks, you could save a lot of money, cause you could take the other factories out of it, but just about all those grants get funded. And if you don't have to buy $10,000 worth of turnout gear this year, that's $10,000 worth of something else. And I guarantee you, I don't know, I do wanna say one thing about your fire department. After our last meeting, I went down to the station and, I've been trying to get down there and meet somebody, and Chief Buckmaster and some folks were down there and showed me around. Somebody, somewhere, it may have been Chief or whoever, somebody had a lot of forethought when they put that together. It's fire sprinkler, it's got a diesel exhaust system in it. You don't see that in a lot of volunteer fire departments. It's got a really nice training room. So I mean, there's a lot of positives here to build on.
And on that topic right there, one of those grants allows us to build things within inside of the structure of an existing fire.
Yeah, you could have applied up to $100,000, I think it is, to modify the facility, as long as you didn't change the footprint.
Okay, as long as it's inside the roof, I guess. And Matt, one more thing, together, those 9 that you talked about, let's talk about real fast. There's a lot of worry about it's gonna cost more. What's it gonna cost?
Well, we discussed compensating them for doing 2 different jobs, just $1,000 a person per year increase.
I think that's, and maybe I'm wrong, I think it's the beauty of it is that we would allow that to even take this, you know, and when we can do it, and number 2, they're already there, and that you're paying, what you're paying in my terms, for every 50 cents that you pay an employee that's full-time, that's about $1,000 a year. Roughly, you take
50 cents an hour, yeah.
about roughly a little over $1,000. So we pay $1,000. So for $1 more an hour, when you're paying 9, I mean you got coverage and you got so to me that's really expensive. The thing I don't want to have happen is a year from now someone go, we didn't see that coming. Because you have 2 departments that already have budgets. It's not like we're trying to create something that's entirely new. I remember when we did do that with the ambulance service, and it took over half our fund balance that year, I believe, to put it on. Remember that, Mark? We went from 1.7 to, I voted against that, by the way.
Well, the good news from that, you can go from a fire department that doesn't create revenue to one that does by merging. I mean, currently EMS is already making revenue, and by putting them under that umbrella, now all of a sudden the department's making revenue. I mean, correct? I mean, you're making a lot of revenue right now, EMS. And in fact, he's making more than he spends. So again, the fire department right now doesn't make revenue, but by bringing EMS, fire and EMA all under one umbrella, all of a sudden it does.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.